Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Small Business Stories. This one, well, it's been a bit in the making. You know, it happens on both ends every once in a while. Things go boom and then, oh, here we go again. But the anticipation is well worth the wait. In the house today, we've got Jenna Harrison, and she is a life coach and the founder of The Uncommon Way. And you're saying, what's uncommon about it? Well, we're going to unpack that now. Jenna, welcome to the show.
I am so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
And I always like to paint the visual experience for our listeners because many folks dial in Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc. They don't go to our YouTube channel at Life Success to watch the video. So, and as I'm looking, I see the background, I see lovely greenery, and I'm looking up here in New Jersey. I see a lot of frost and dead leaves. Where are you dialing in from?
I am dialing in from Mallorca, Spain. So that is our chosen home. We have planted roots here. We bought a house. We did all the things, sold everything back home, and really happy with our decision. But yeah, it is nice and green in this area, which is beautiful. I love the pines and being able to hike around, and there are olive trees everywhere, and it's just it is a dream come true for us.
Well, let's just start there. We know what the show is about, but I think that this is part of it. A lot of people are embracing becoming an expat, exiting
Mm.
stage left from the US. Spain is the most popular destination, Portugal and Italy, of course, right up there. We've had a few guests on who have made the plunge and gone to Costa Rica, gone to Argentina, all different kinds of places where they've moved to. Can you share whatever you're comfortable with? Now, we know you have a husband in the military, and so there's been probably some movement there.
Mm.
And what we'd like to know is what was the biggest shift you had to make in moving to Mallorca?
Such a great question. Yes. So my husband is actually retired now. That's what allowed us to be location independent. He retired on the 1st and we left on the 15th. So it was in the plans, in the making. We'd been scouting out locations and knew that we wanted to come back to the Mediterranean. It's just the place that we always came to when we traveled and we were stationed overseas in this area many times. So we just loved it. It was something that we were able to prepare for a long time. But it really does speak to the uncommon way and being able to choose what you want your life to look like and to be willing to do things that aren't what everyone around you is doing. And it's interesting when I talk to people here now, they talk about friends back home that say, oh, yes, we want to do it too. We want to do it. We're going to do that definitely. But what's so interesting and special about the people you meet here is that all of us actually did it. And that is really what it comes down to. It's one decision. And it's one decision that it's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be probably smooth. You're going to have interesting conversations with your family and with people around you, but you're making the decision to do it. And then you actually do it. You don't just talk about it.
I think that's actually a really good segue and maybe even a parallel to what happens with entrepreneurship. You hear so many people saying, oh, yes, I've got my corporate job. I don't really like it. I want to give it up. I want the freedom and flexibility of entrepreneurship. Or I've started my side hustle, but ooh, I'm not quite sure. I'm ready to make the plunge. But that's what you have to do. Like you said, it has to start with you have to make the decision.
Absolutely. I had a client who was in a corporate job, and she said, well, as soon as I'm making the same amount she was a graphic designer, a web designer, as soon as I'm making the same amount, then I'll quit my job. But when we got to that time, she said, actually, you know what? I need just 3 months of savings as well to really make me feel comfortable. And then we got to her 3 month of savings goal, and she said, no, it really needs to be 6 months of savings.
Mm.
And what was going on, it had nothing to do with the number in the bank or whatever goal. It had to do with her sense of identity and safety. And she just identified as a corporate person that relied on a corporate income. And she hadn't yet made the switch in her identity to a different type of person. So I actually see this a lot with doctors and lawyers. They are some of the most complex cases that I work with because their identity is so strongly rooted in being a doctor or being a lawyer.
And that's just it, right? Like I talk about this when you've got to make some of these decisions. You can't be like, for example, a little bit pregnant. You are or you are not, right? There is no gray space and in between. And I think that this is the fallacy that a lot of folks have bought into. I can do both. I can straddle both. But then you see a lot of burnout, you see a lot of indecision, all of the things that cue you up for how you help entrepreneurs find that clarity they need in their businesses to be able to move forward in a reliable, not so frenetic way. Talk to us
Yes,
about
yes.
more about this resistance you're seeing. So not just amongst the medical folks and the attorneys, but the resistance. Help unpack that a bit for us. What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, for my clients who are mostly women, I do work with men on occasion, but typically everybody is a woman, and we are conditioned from a very young age towards things that are the antithesis of what it takes to be successful as an entrepreneur. And so that requires some unpacking. And one of the things that we, at least I tend to do, and a lot of the clients that I attract tend to do, is we overfunction. So, in order to not be what our mothers were and to really succeed in life and to become, financially secure and to become an accomplished person, we've learned to overperform and to overdo. And that's worked for us so well that we keep doing it again and again. But most of us get to a point where we realize it's just not sustainable. And what is mind shattering is that it isn't necessary either. You know, John Maynard Keynes predicted 100 years ago that when we got to this point, no one would work more than a 3-day work week. And he said with the advances that we would have in globalization and economies of scale, it just wouldn't be necessary anymore. And we'd be able to devote ourselves to deeper, more meaningful pursuits. And we'd have more than enough time with our 3 days of work to provide for ourselves. But what's fascinating is that we still have not accomplished that. And it's not because we can't do it, it's because we don't have that identity, like I said before. And we don't believe that we can create enough value in 3 days a week. We think that it takes lots of doing and that things need to be hard and that then we feel very worthy and we feel very proud and we can lay our head down on the pillow well at night because we've checked enough off of our to-do list. And while it makes us feel good in the moment, in the long term, it's such a net drag on our lives, unfortunately.
And it speaks to some of the things you said at the beginning of the podcast about even making the move to go offshore and overseas, that you're going to get this resistance from family, having difficult conversations. Again, lots of parallels to entrepreneurship. What do you mean
Yeah.
you're giving up your corporate job? What do you mean you're giving up
Yes.
the reliability and predictability of a paycheck every 2 weeks? And what are you doing? Entrepreneurship, it's not good, it's difficult. And it is. And it's not like people in general achieve overnight success, right? Entrepreneurship
Right.
is the marathon, not the sprint. And to eat anywhere close to that idealized 3 days per week, work on my own terms, flexible, making income, it's generally not an overnight process. Most of us don't go viral
Yeah.
right away. And so,
Right.
talk to us about the perceptions that people have about business success, because there's, I think, a lot rooted in that. Everything from the combination of what we grew up, these patterns you're talking about believing in, to societal pressures, to just the general difficulties of entrepreneurship. It's not an easy path. And I think that gets all muddled in our heads, which is what you address, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I like to tell people that entrepreneurship in itself is not hard because we're just solving a problem for somebody. We're just creating solutions that people want to pay for. And that's really it. But what does make it hard is we make it hard, right? Our ways of doing things, our brains, the way we feel when we run into resistance, when we run into discomfort, when we aren't able to think outside of the box that we've been um, accustomed to living in. I always say it's like we think we're living in an ocean of possibility, but really we're in a fishbowl inside the ocean. And that fishbowl is our mind, and it really determines all of the opportunities we see for ourselves, all of the possibilities we see for ourselves. I'll talk to a new entrepreneur, and that person will say, I just don't know how I'm going to make fill in the blank, $10,000 this month, $15,000 this month. I, on the other hand, will see 100 different possibilities for how they could make $10,000 or $15,000, but it's because they haven't lived it yet, right? And their brain isn't used to thinking in that way. And so with the struggles we feel about moving, and creating new things, it's really has to do with how we're used to thinking about it. So for a new entrepreneur, they'll tell me there's no way I could work a 3-day work week because I don't have a team yet. There's no way that I can do this. But then I'll talk to someone who's at 7 figures who has a team and says, there's no way I could work a 3-day work week because I have a team to manage. And that shows you the common denominator is the way of thinking. It's not the external circumstance. And so that's just the example of a 3-day work week, but it's really for anything that a person wants to create in their business. And they'll say, the reason I can't do it is X. But our work, the fun work, is really deciding what is it we want and then reverse engineering how to get there. And in order to do that, you have to believe it's possible. Like I had to believe we could establish a wonderful life in Spain. Otherwise, I never would have reversed engineered the steps in order to get there. But so many people don't allow themselves to go there, and then they don't do the work and reverse engineer the steps like you were talking about, all the things they need to do to actually create it.
When I looked at your website, which is the uncommon way for folks that are dialing in and listening, easy to spell, you should be able to find it, no problem online. It's an inviting place to go. I really liked the fact that you're barefoot. You don't see this often. I thought, oh, that's nice, cute little painted toenails and all of the rest of that good stuff. You're with your dog, you're on a beach, you're by the water. So it's this invitation to have the lifestyle like me. Is that part of the appeal that people have to get there first to believe that they could have something like that before they sign up for the coaching? Or do they get to some kind of other experience that the light bulb goes off and says, yeah, I need help? Or is it both?
Oh, such a great question. It really is both. So many people come to me and they have already, so for instance, if you are in the United States and many other countries and you Google business coach for women or business coach for female entrepreneurs or any iteration of those keywords, I come up on the first page of Google. So a lot of the people that I end up speaking with have already had those epiphany moments. They've already decided this is it. I no longer tolerate what I have and I need to create something new and different. And those people are already looking for a business coach and they find my site very inviting and then we end up talking and then we work together. Other people, though, are, for instance, I just had a person come in who it was actually her partner who said, I know that my wife is capable of so much, but she keeps holding herself back, right? She keeps saying that this may not be possible for her. And so I'd really like for you to work with her. Well, obviously, when I have a conversation with her, she isn't yet at that point. And sometimes that happens within one conversation. She gets to that epiphany, right? It's like you needed the permission. You need to be in a place where someone can actually give you the permission and help you see that it's possible. But then there are other people that I talk to that a year or 2 years goes by after I had my initial conversation with them until they come back and then they say, okay, now I'm ready. Right now I'm ready. And so it's our journeys are different. My own journey was about 2 decades of going back and forth and, saying yes, say no, talking myself out of my best decisions until I was able to do it. So anyone that gets there faster than 2 decades, I'm so impressed with. And I think it's really helpful to have people talking, to have more voices saying that it's possible. And that's for every stage of the journey, not just starting your journey, but if you already have a business and you've been told, for instance, that the only way to succeed is by dancing on Instagram, right? Or by being on social at all. I went off social for 2 years and my business doubled. You really get to call your own shots. And so I get a lot of people as well who are like, oh, I have a business, but it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. I want it to feel like something I actually like doing, or I have people that are very successful, but they're just overworked and they want to find a more aligned model where they feel like it fits their life and their business is supporting them rather than they are always supporting their business. Yeah.
I think that, like, just even in what I've seen, that a lot of folks aren't being honest with themselves, let alone honest openly. And so I really
Mm,
appreciate your candor here saying, yeah, it took a decade or two to get there. And even social media is not all that and a bag of potato chips. There's other ways that you can go through it. Maybe you need to get off for mental health, take a break, whatever else that it is. But there
yeah.
are ways to be able to move forward. And again, it's not overnight. These people that, oh yeah, yeah,
Mm.
I went viral, bros and Lambos, woo hoo hoo, let's go. That's fake.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
younger entrepreneurs don't realize that. And the ones that I've seen and mentored, the older
Mm.
ones of us have gone through a few things in life already. And so we're like, yeah, I guess there's a few more bumps ahead because this isn't the simplest path, right?
And it's really fascinating where it hits as well, because it's not that it's this linear progression of slogging it out and hard work that finally gets us to a result. I've had clients take off out of the gate, had the quintessential 10K months, a coach that wanted a 10K months, and everything looked rosy. And then she had a major break in her ideas about if this was even right. It just surfaced all of these stories and all of this resistance, like you said, about how is this really fair? Is she doing ethical work? It brought a lot of work and immediately when that happened, of course, we constrict and her sales dried up. And so that was when she actually had to do the work, was on the other side of those 10K months, right? Then she had to build herself back, break down the foundations, but build herself up stronger to create even more success later on. But in order for her to be in integrity with her work, it was just something she had to go through and fight through. And so it's interesting where it comes up for us. I have other clients that will take off for so long, uh, steadily through steady growth, and then just get to a point where they're like done. They're so burned out and they don't even, like, I had one tell me, I just can't even. I used to do this work for free. I loved it so much. Like before it was a business, it was work I just did for free and I would love it. She said, now I can't even drag myself to show up and do a training for my membership. It feels like pins and needles, it feels like a torture for me. And so what I tell my people that are like me and they're slow burners that kind of took a while to get going, I tell them all of the work you're doing now it's going to pay back tenfold later on. Because if you were to have this crisis or to have have to do this kind of work with visibility or with money or with receiving or allowing support or any of the other things that we have to work through, um, selling with full integrity and confidence. If you were to do that when you were at 100K or seven figures or further on, it would be a much bigger impact in your business than it is right now. So anything that you're doing right now transfers to the future. And people that do have kind of an overnight sensation, chances are, from what I've seen, there's always a point where they then have to go revisit the lessons that they skipped over in the first place.
Yes, because I think burnout is very real, right? We hear about
Yes.
it in every walk of life, regardless of what your path is, whether you work or don't, you have a job, you don't, whatever it is, right? An entrepreneur, burnout is real. And I think it just takes a lot for people to realize, wait a minute, how does this thing that I used to love doing, like I've heard this too from several people, become such a burden that you just can't pay me enough to do anymore? So what
Yes.
shifted, right? What flipped? Which gets me to, how does the uncommon way address this? Like, what is uncommon about it, Jenna?
Such a great question. So we just choose what we want and then we create that. And often people are just flabbergasted with that. They're like, well, how can I just create what I want? This is the way the industry is, and this is the way it has to be. But that's not actually true. It's often just what has been done in the past. And here we are kind of reiterating what's been done in the past. That doesn't necessarily mean anything about the future. So when we are bold enough to do something that doesn't look like what everyone else is doing, and then to actually create it, and then we become the examples of what's possible, it feels like a dream, right? It feels like a pipe dream, actually, like too good to be true. And therefore, we have to become the ones that create it. So it is the uncommon way is definitely a place for visionary entrepreneurs and leaders as well, because I do work with, corporate women that also want to expand their identity and start doing things differently and reinvent themselves in some way. But it really comes down to being brave enough to do things completely differently. So I have clients that have all different business plans in all different industries. And I think what's special about this place is that we really support each other in doing exactly what we want, as opposed to doing it all like we're all doing things the same way. No, everyone's doing things completely different. Some people want to move to Spain. Other people would never want to do that in a lifetime, right? Some people want to work 3-day work weeks. Other people would never want to do that. Some people want to be able to create a 7-figure, 8-figure business appear on the Today Show. Others want nothing like that. They just want enough for money coming in and to live the lifestyle that they already enjoy. And so that is what is uncommon because we're actually creating what looks amazing for each of us.
It's right. And it's different, right? And just because it worked in the past doesn't mean it's going to work for you, right? And
Good.
everybody's got all these
Yes.
different things. So I think
Yes.
it's also a really good segue into your Uncommon Way. I understand you have a new leadership program, an Uncommon Way community. What are you willing to share about that on our show here today?
Yes, yes, I do. So that is a place for people that are really interested in this identity work and this kind of change and shifting and new ways of thinking. And they want to be surrounded by other people who are also interested in that. Because so often we find groups where, yes, we're all really excited about creating money or we're all really excited about entrepreneurship, but we're not necessarily excited about doing it in our own way or doing it with integrity or doing it in a way that seems sort of counter logical, you know? And that's a exciting place for a lot of people who want to have that support, but also have the coaching to really address the identity work, not just from the brain, but also from the nervous system. That leads us to a lot of overfunctioning, a lot of overwork, and also from a like even an energetic point of view. A lot of people, there's different, I tell it like on my clients go from woo curious to woo tolerant to woo, and then some are just completely not interested in it. But for those who are, it's a space where we can also talk about like receiving and allowing. Typically, when we are really in alignment with our goals and when we are aligned to that money, it's much easier to receive it. I'll say
That's it,
that.
right? Mindset.
Yeah.
It's wonderful
Yes.
things. Now, as we're
Yeah.
heading toward the end of our show here, how and where can people find you or get in touch with you?
So I am very easy to find because I am at the Uncommon Way everywhere. So the Uncommon Way is the website. I have a podcast, The Uncommon Way, and I also have Instagram at The Uncommon Way. My social handles are The Uncommon Way. So I would really love to hear from anyone who found this helpful or even has any questions because as you know, as a podcaster, we do kind of talk into the air. And whenever a real person comes into our DMs, it's such a gift. It's such a joy, right? And I would love to hear from any of your listeners because that is such a treat to actually connect with a real human.
Oh, it is so fun. And just I'll add a little sidebar. Last year, I was at some holiday networking and whatnot, and just, having a conversation with whatever, some folks. I don't even remember who they were at this point, but someone came up to me and said, I know your voice. I said, pardon me? They said, you have a podcast. I listened to it. I'm like, oh my God. They're like, are you Laurel? And like, yes. I'm like, oh, thank you so much. They're like, yeah, I listen to it all the time. I knew that voice right away. And so it's just, it's
I
heartwarming. It makes us
love
mushy.
that story.
Yeah,
I
it was really good.
love that story. Oh, that is very cool and good for them for having such discerning ears, right?
No, right. And it was a one and done. No one's done that since. But yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Right. I'll
Yeah.
still revel in its glory for as long as I can. So with that, our last question. If we got to peek into your closet, now I have a sense you
Hmm.
might be in there, and we looked at some footwear that personified who you, Jenna Harrison, is, that represents everything about you. What are we looking at, and describe how it represents who you are?
I love this question so much. So, 100% easily, it would be, have you ever seen these custom made sandals? That they're made from a durable leather on the bottom, and then they take little strips of different colors and they twist them around and make them just for you. And it's amazing because they mold to your feet over time. The leather just becomes so you. And anyone else that would try and put these on, they would know right away it's not their shoes. But they're very comfortable, they're practical for beach weather, and they're really nice to look at, really pretty, and they're also just 100% yours.
Oh, I love that. That sounds like exactly what I would have expected from you, right? You've got to be sandals, you're in the warm weather, and something that's
Yeah.
custom and unique. So, with that,
Yes.
folks, this is a wrap. Thank you so much to Jenna Harrison, life coach and founder of The Uncommon Way. Thanks for being on our show today.
Thanks for having me. It's fun.